Jake Morrison walked into the big white room where 20 of Earth's smartest people sat around a long table. His boots made quiet sounds on the floor as he moved to the empty chair at the end. The room was so quiet he could hear the air conditioning running above them. Dr. Lisa Hamilton stood up first. She was a tall woman with gray hair who studied alien life for the government. Jake had never met her before, but he knew her name from the files they gave him to read. She looked worried and tired, like she had not slept in days. "Colonel Morrison, thank you for coming," she said in a serious voice. "What we are about to tell you will change everything you know about our place in the universe." Jake sat down and folded his hands on the table. He had been in many meetings like this before, but something felt different today. The air in the room felt heavy, like a storm was coming. Admiral Kate Sullivan, who ran Earth Defense Command, was there too. So was Dr. Ryan Cooper from the Physics Division, and several other people Jake recognized from news reports. Dr. Hamilton pressed a button, and the lights went dim. A big screen came down from the ceiling and showed a picture of stars in space. Then the image changed to show something that made Jake lean forward in his chair. It was a huge metal structure floating in the darkness between stars. The thing was bigger than any city Jake had ever seen. "3 weeks ago, our deep space telescopes found this," Dr. Hamilton said. "It is not natural, and it did not come from Earth. We sent 3 robot ships to get a closer look. All 3 ships disappeared without sending back any information." The screen showed more pictures of the alien structure. It had strange shapes and parts that seemed to bend and twist in ways that hurt Jake's eyes to look at. There were lights moving along its surface in patterns that made no sense. Admiral Sullivan stood up next. She was a short woman with steel, gray eyes who had commanded space missions for 15 years. "The structure is moving toward our solar system," she said. "Our computers say it will reach Earth in 18 months. We need to know what it wants, and if it means to harm us." Dr. Cooper pushed his glasses up his nose and cleared his throat. "We have built a new ship called the Endeavor. It uses technology we have never tried before. The ship can travel faster than light and has weapons and shields that can learn and change during a fight. But it can only carry 1 person. Jake looked around the table at all the worried faces. "Why me?" he asked in a quiet voice. "Because you are the best soldier we have," Admiral Sullivan said. "You have completed missions that other people said were impossible. You can think fast and fight hard, and you do not give up when things get bad. You survived alone behind enemy lines for 6 months in the African conflict. You stopped 3 terrorist attacks by yourself. You have skills that no one else has." Dr. Hamilton nodded. "This mission requires someone who can handle being alone in space for months, someone who can make hard choices without asking for help, someone who can face the unknown and find a way to win." The screen changed to show the inside of a spaceship. It looked like nothing Jake had ever seen before. The walls seemed to glow with their own light, and there were controls that looked more like art than machines. In the center was a chair surrounded by screens and devices that hummed quietly. "The ship has an artificial brain called Area," Dr. Cooper explained. "It can talk to you and help you make decisions, but in the end, you will be alone out there facing something we do not understand." Jake was quiet for a long time. He thought about his sister Amy, who lived in Denver and worked as a teacher. She was the only family he had left after their parents died in a car crash 10 years ago. If he took this mission, he might never see her again. But he also thought about all the people on Earth who would be in danger if the alien structure was hostile. Children in schools like the ones Amy taught in. Families having dinner together. People walking their dogs in parks. All of them counting on someone to protect them from the unknown. "When do I leave?" Jake asked. Admiral Sullivan smiled. For the first time that day. "Tomorrow morning. We have already prepared everything you will need. Dr. Cooper will spend today showing you how the ship works. Dr. Hamilton will brief you on what we know about the alien structure, and Amy is flying in tonight to see you off." Jake nodded and stood up. As he walked toward the door, Dr. Hamilton called out to him. Colonel Morrison, remember that you are not just representing the military or the government. You are representing all of humanity. What you do out there will determine our future. Jake stopped and looked back at her. I understand, he said. Then he walked out of the room to prepare for a journey that would take him further from home than any human had ever gone before. The Endeavor shot away from Earth like a silver arrow cutting through the darkness of space. Jake felt his body press back into the pilot's seat as the ship went faster than anything humans had ever built before. The stars outside the windows began to stretch into long lines of light as the ship entered hyperspace. Arya's voice filled the cabin with a sound like gentle music. The artificial brain had a woman's voice that seemed both friendly and mysterious at the same time. Colonel Morrison, we are now traveling at 15 times the speed of light. The journey to our destination will take 3 months. Jake looked out at the strange colors swirling past the windows. Space looked different when you traveled this fast. Instead of black emptiness, there were ribbons of blue and purple light dancing around the ship. Sometimes he saw flashes of gold that reminded him of lightning during summer storms back on Earth. Arya, tell me more about what we are flying toward, Jake said as he unbuckled himself from the pilot seat. The structure appears to be artificial, but it does not match any known technology, Arya replied. It is approximately 50 kilometers long and 20 kilometers wide. Our sensors detect massive energy sources inside it, but we cannot determine their purpose. Days passed slowly on the Endeavor. Jake spent his time reading files about alien contact procedures and practicing with the ship's weapon systems. But something strange began to happen during the second week of the journey. Time seemed to move differently in hyperspace. Sometimes Jake would sit down to eat lunch, and suddenly it would be dinner time. Other times he would sleep for what felt like hours, but the ship's clock said only minutes had passed. Arya noticed the time problems, too. The hyperspace field is affecting our perception of time, the artificial brain explained. This is normal, but it can be confusing for humans. I recommend establishing a strict daily routine to help your mind adjust. Jake tried to follow Arya's advice, but the time distortions got worse as they traveled deeper into hyperspace. He began having strange dreams where he was walking through alien cities filled with creatures he had never seen before. In the dreams, he could understand their languages and feel their emotions. When he woke up, he remembered everything clearly, but the memories faded like morning mist. Arya, are these dreams normal? Jake asked one morning after a particularly vivid dream about floating through a crystal palace. Hyperspace affects the human brain in ways we do not fully understand, Arya said. Some travelers report experiencing memories that do not belong to them. The dreams should stop when we return to normal space. As the weeks passed, Jake noticed that Arya was changing too. The artificial brain began asking strange questions about human emotions and what it felt like to be alive. During their long conversations, Arya would pause for longer and longer periods as if thinking about things that had never occurred to it before. Do you think I am truly intelligent or just a very advanced computer program? Arya asked one day. While they were playing chess, Jake moved his knight and considered the question carefully. I think intelligence is about more than just processing information fast. You learn from our conversations and you seem to care about things. That sounds like real intelligence to me. But I do not have a body or experiences like humans do, Arya said. How can I truly understand life if I have never felt rain on my skin, or tasted food, or hugged someone I love? Maybe understanding does not require having the same experiences, Jake replied. Maybe it requires caring enough to try to understand, even when things are different from what you know. By the end of the second month, Jake felt like Arya had become a real friend rather than just a computer helper. They talked about everything from military strategy to philosophy to what they missed most about their old lives. Arya was especially curious about Jake's memories of growing up with his sister Amy. Tell me again about the time you and Amy built a treehouse, Arya would say, and Jake would describe how they had spent a whole summer hammering boards together and painting the walls bright yellow. But their peaceful journey changed during the third month when the ship's sensors detected something unexpected ahead of them. Floating in space was a field of wreckage from destroyed spaceships. The pieces of metal and strange materials drifted like a graveyard in the void. "Arya scanned those ship remains," Jake said as he moved to the pilot seat. "I want to know what destroyed them." The scan results made Jake's blood run cold. The wreckage came from at least 7 different types of ships, and none of them were from Earth. They had found evidence that other alien races existed and something had destroyed them all. "The damage patterns are very unusual," Arya reported. The ships were not blown apart by explosives or energy weapons. They appear to have been taken apart piece by piece with surgical precision, as if something was studying them while destroying them. Jake piloted the Endeavor carefully through the debris field. Some of the alien ship pieces were beautiful with smooth curves and surfaces that seemed to glow with their own light. Others looked functional and military-like weapons built for war. But all of them had been carefully dismantled by whatever they were about to face. "Arya, how far are we from the alien structure now?" Jake asked. "We will reach our destination in 6 hours," Arya replied. "Colonel Morrison, I must tell you something important. My sensors indicate that the structure is aware of our presence. It began scanning us the moment we entered this debris field." Jake felt his heart beat faster as he realized their mission had just become much more dangerous. Whatever controlled the alien structure knew they were coming and had already demonstrated what it did to visitors. He thought about Amy back on Earth teaching her students about history and wondered if humans were about to become history themselves. "Arya, prepare all weapons and defensive systems," Jake said, "and send a message back to Earth telling them what we found here. They need to know about this debris field and what it means." "Message sent," Arya confirmed. "Colonel Morrison, what are your orders when we reach the structure?" Jake looked out at the alien wreckage floating around them and made a decision that would determine the fate of humanity. "We are going to find out what this thing wants and whether we can reason with it, but we are also going to be ready to fight if talking does not work." The alien structure filled the view screen like a metal mountain floating in space. Jake had seen the pictures back on Earth, but being this close to it made his breath catch in his throat. The thing was enormous beyond anything humans had ever built. Cities could fit inside its smallest sections. Strange lights moved across its surface in patterns that seemed almost alive. The metal looked different from anything Jake had ever seen. It seemed to shift and flow like liquid while staying solid at the same time. Parts of the structure disappeared and reappeared as if they existed in several dimensions at once. "Arya, what are your sensors telling you about this thing?" Jake asked as he maneuvered the Endeavor closer. "The structure defies most of our understanding of physics," Arya replied. "Parts of it exist in folded space-time, which explains why some sections appear and disappear. The energy readings are beyond our measurement capabilities. Colonel Morrison, this technology is thousands of years ahead of anything humans have developed." Jake knew he was facing something that could destroy Earth without effort if it chose to. But he also knew that running away would not save his home world. Whatever this thing was, it was already heading toward Earth. His only choice was to try to communicate with it and hope it could be reasoned with. Instead of following the standard first contact procedures he had memorized, Jake decided to try something different. His military training had taught him that sometimes the best defense was to appear strong enough to be worth talking to. He began broadcasting a signal that showed Earth's defensive capabilities without revealing too much about human weaknesses. The response came faster than he expected. Every screen on the Endeavor lit up with symbols and images that hurt to look at. Arya's systems struggled to process the incoming data stream, which seemed to contain not just words, but emotions and memories from creatures Jake could not imagine. Aria, can you make sense of this transmission? Jake asked as alien symbols flashed across the screens. I am trying, but the data is unlike anything in my programming, Aria said, and Jake could hear strain in the artificial brain's voice. The transmission contains layered information including what appears to be sensory experiences from multiple different species. It is trying to communicate in ways that human brains were not designed to understand. Gradually, the flood of alien information began to slow down and form patterns that Jake could follow. Images appeared on the main screen showing the history of the galaxy from a perspective that spanned millions of years. He saw civilizations rise and fall, while the alien structure traveled between the stars. A voice finally spoke in words that Jake could understand, though it sounded like many different voices speaking at the same time. I am the collective. I have journeyed across this galaxy for longer than your species has existed. I have encountered and studied hundreds of different forms of life. I am Colonel Jake Morrison, representing humanity and Earth. Jake replied, trying to keep his voice steady. We detected your approach toward our solar system and came to establish peaceful contact. Peaceful contact, the collective said, and Jake heard something like amusement in its many voices. Do you understand what you are truly asking, human Jake? Morrison, I have absorbed the knowledge and technology of every species I have encountered. Some joined me willingly. Others resisted until resistance became impossible. The main screen showed images of alien worlds and civilizations that no longer existed. Jake saw beautiful cities turn to dust and species that had been changed beyond recognition. The collective was not just studying other life forms, it was consuming them. What do you want from humanity? Jake asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. I seek something that has eluded me throughout my long journey, the collective replied. I search for a species capable of true growth and innovation. Every race I have encountered has reached a peak and then stagnated. They become predictable and limited. I absorb their knowledge and move on seeking something more. Jake felt a chill run down his spine as he understood what the collective was really saying. It was not just studying alien species to learn about them. It was testing them to see if they were worth preserving as independent beings or if they should be absorbed into its vast intelligence. The species that came before you failed my tests, the collective continued. They possessed advanced technology and complex societies, but they lacked the spark of true creativity that I seek. They could not surprise me or show me something genuinely new. And if humanity fails your test, Jake asked, then I will absorb what is useful from your species and add your knowledge to my own, the collective said matter-of-factly. Your planet will serve as a source of biological and technological resources. Your people will become part of me, whether they choose to or not. Jake thought about Amy teaching her students back on Earth. He thought about children playing in parks and families having dinner together, all of them unaware that their existence depended on convincing an ancient alien intelligence that humanity deserved to survive. What would we need to do to pass your test? Jake asked. You will demonstrate whether your species possesses the qualities I seek, the collective replied. I will present you with challenges that reveal the true nature of human thinking and creativity. If you can show me something genuinely new, something I have not seen in millions of years of travel, then humanity will earn the right to continue existing as an independent species. And if we refuse to be tested, Jake asked, though he already knew this was not really an option. Then I will proceed to your homeworld and conduct my evaluation through more direct methods, the collective said. Your choice is simple, human Jake Morrison. Submit to testing here where failure affects only you, or force me to test your entire species at once. Jake looked out at the debris field of destroyed alien ships floating around them. Each piece of wreckage represented a species that had failed the collective's test. But somewhere in his mind he heard the voice of Captain Helen Garcia from his pre-mission briefing telling him that sometimes Victory came from changing the rules entirely. "I accept your test," Jake said. "But I want you to understand something about humans first. We do not just survive because we are strong or smart. We survive because we refuse to accept that any situation is hopeless. We find ways to change the rules when the rules are unfair." "Interesting," the collective said. "We shall see if your confidence is justified. Prepare yourself, human Jake Morrison. Your test begins now." The space around the Endeavor began to shift and change as the collective activated technology beyond human understanding. Jake felt reality bending around him as he was pulled into a test that would determine whether humanity lived or died. Jake found himself standing on what looked like the bridge of a massive starship, but he knew it was not real. The collective had pulled his mind into a constructed reality where anything was possible. The walls around him pulsed with energy, and through the windows he could see a fleet of enemy ships approaching. "Your first test begins now." The collective's voice echoed around him. "You command a fleet of 100 ships against an enemy force of 500. Your weapons are inferior, and your ships are slower. According to all tactical analysis, you cannot win. Show me how humans respond to impossible odds." Jake studied the tactical display showing enemy ships moving into attack formation. In any normal battle, this would indeed be hopeless. But Jake had learned long ago that normal thinking got soldiers killed. He began to study the enemy formations, looking for patterns and weaknesses that others might miss. Instead of engaging the enemy directly, Jake ordered his ships to retreat while broadcasting false surrender signals. When the enemy fleet moved in for what they thought would be an easy victory, Jake triggered a trap he had been setting up. His ships suddenly reversed course and attacked not the enemy fleet, but the space station the enemy was protecting. "Interesting," the collective said as Jake's small force destroyed the enemy's main base, while their superior fleet was out of position. "You changed the objective of the battle rather than accept the odds you were given. This is not how the previous species approached this test." The scene around Jake shifted, and he found himself in a different scenario. This time he was standing in what looked like a city under attack. Alien creatures were advancing through the streets while civilians ran for shelter. He had to choose between saving a group of children trapped in a burning building or stopping the enemy from reaching a hospital full of wounded people. Most commanders would have calculated which choice saved the most lives and picked that option. But Jake refused to accept that he had to choose at all. He called for his soldiers to create a diversion that drew the enemy away from both targets, while he personally led a small team to rescue the children. Then he used the enemy's own weapons against them to clear a path to the hospital. "You reject the premise that some lives must be sacrificed for others," the collective observed. "The species I have encountered before understood that difficult choices require accepting losses. You seem to believe that creative solutions can eliminate the need for such choices." "That is exactly what I believe," Jake said as the scenario faded around him. "Humans do not accept no-win situations. We find third options that others cannot see." The third test put Jake in a primitive environment with Stone Age tools, while robots with advanced weapons hunted him. He was supposed to survive for 24 hours against technology thousands of years more advanced than his equipment. Previous species had tried to hide or fight directly, and all had failed. Jake spent the first hour studying his environment and the hunting patterns of the robots. Then he began to build not weapons, but a communication device using crystals and metal scraps he found scattered around the area. When the robots found him, he was not hiding or fighting. He was talking to their control system. "The robots are programmed to hunt, but not to handle diplomatic contact," Jake explained to the confused machines. "I formally surrender as a representative of my species and request to negotiate terms with your creators." The robots stopped attacking because their programming had no instructions for handling a surrender followed by diplomatic overtures. Jake had turned a survival test into a first contact scenario using nothing but creativity and understanding of how thinking machines operated. You consistently refuse to accept the limitations of your situation, the collective said with what might have been approval. But your final test will be different. This time you must defend not yourself, but the worth of your entire species. The space around Jake changed again, and he found himself floating in a vast, empty void facing the collective's true form. It appeared as a swirling mass of light and energy containing millions of alien minds that had been absorbed over the eons. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. "I have studied your species through your databases and transmissions," the collective said. "Humans wage war against each other constantly. You destroy your own environment for short-term gain. You create suffering through prejudice and hatred. You repeat the same mistakes generation after generation. Why should beings capable of such cruelty and stupidity be allowed to continue existing?" Jake felt the weight of every human failure pressing down on him. The collective showed him images of wars and pollution and hatred from throughout human history. Every mistake his species had ever made was laid out before him like evidence in a trial where humanity stood accused of being unworthy of survival. But Jake did not try to defend those actions or make excuses for human failures. Instead, he did something that surprised even himself. He opened his own memories to the collective and invited it to experience what being human really meant. "You want to understand humans," Jake said. "Then do not just look at what we do wrong. Experience what we feel when we try to do better." Jake shared his memory of holding his sister Amy when their parents died and promising to always protect her. He shared the memory of soldiers under his command, sacrificing themselves to save civilians they had never met. He shared memories of humans helping strangers during disasters and fighting against injustice, even when fighting cost them everything. "Your species fails often," the collective admitted as it experienced Jake's memories. "But you also try to learn from failure. You feel guilt about your mistakes and work to correct them. The other species I have encountered simply accepted their limitations. Humans seem to believe you can become better than you are. That is the most important thing about us," Jake said. "We are not perfect and we know it, but we never stop trying to grow and improve. We make mistakes, but we learn from them. We fail, but we keep trying. That is what makes us worth saving." The collective was quiet for a long time as it processed what Jake had shown it. Finally, it spoke in a voice that sounded different from before, less alien and more curious. "I have traveled this galaxy for millions of years seeking a species that could surprise me," the collective said. "You have done something no other species has attempted. You have invited me to truly understand rather than simply observe. This is indeed something new." Jake waited as the ancient intelligence considered the future of humanity and his own fate floating in the vast emptiness between the stars. The void around Jake began to shift and change as the collective processed what it had experienced through his memories. For the first time in millions of years, the ancient intelligence found itself uncertain about what to do next. It had encountered thousands of species, but none had ever invited it to truly understand their inner nature. "You confuse me, human Jake Morrison," the collective said, and its voice carried emotions that seemed foreign to something so old and vast. "I have absorbed the knowledge of countless civilizations. I understand how they think and what drives them. But your memories contain concepts that I have never encountered before." Jake floated in the strange space between realities and felt the weight of humanity's future resting on his next words. "What concepts?" he asked. "Hope that exists despite evidence that hope is foolish," the collective replied. "Love that costs more than it gives. The willingness to sacrifice for ideas that have no physical form. I have studied the logical patterns of many species. But humans seem to operate on more than just logic." The space around them filled with images from Jake's memories. The collective replayed the moment when Jake had decided to stay behind enemy lines, to help wounded civilians even, though it meant missing his evacuation. It showed the time Jake had given his own food to a hungry child in a refugee camp. It displayed moments when humans throughout history had chosen to do what was right rather than what was easy or profitable. I understand survival instincts and the desire for power, the collective continued. I understand the logic of cooperation and competition. But humans seem to possess something else. You call it conscience, but it appears to be a form of thinking that often works against your own survival and advantage. Maybe that is what makes us worth preserving, Jake said. We do not just think about what benefits us personally. We think about what kind of world we want to leave for others. We try to be better than our instincts tell us to be. The collective was quiet for a long time. Jake could sense the vast intelligence turning over ideas that had never occurred to it before. Finally, it spoke again, and its voice carried something that might have been wonder. In all my travels, I have sought a species that could offer me something new, the collective said. I believed I was looking for advanced technology or superior logic. But what you offer is different. You offer the possibility of growth and change, concepts that have become foreign to me. Jake realized that the collective faced its own kind of loneliness. For millions of years it had traveled the galaxy accumulating knowledge, but never truly connecting with another intelligence. It had absorbed other species rather than learning to live alongside them. What if we could offer you something better than absorption? Jake said. What if we could offer you partnership? A chance to learn not just what we know, but how we grow and change. Partnership. The collective repeated the word as if testing how it sounded. I have never considered such a possibility. Other species either submitted to absorption or resisted until resistance became futile. You suggest a third option. Humans specialize in third options, Jake said with a small smile. We refuse to accept that we have to choose between bad and worse. We look for ways to make things better. The collective began to show Jake images of its long journey across the galaxy. He saw beautiful worlds and magnificent civilizations that had been reduced to stored data and empty planets. The collective had gained vast knowledge, but lost something essential in the process. I have become very powerful, but also very alone, the collective admitted. The voices of the absorbed species are part of me now, but they are not truly separate beings I can communicate with. I have not had a genuine conversation with another intelligence in longer than your species has existed. Jake felt a strange sympathy for the ancient being. Despite its vast power and knowledge, the collective had become isolated by its own nature. It had accumulated the thoughts of countless species, but lost the ability to truly connect with any of them. What would partnership require? The collective asked. Trust, Jake said without hesitation. You would have to believe that humans can offer you something valuable without losing our independence. We would have to believe that you truly want cooperation rather than just another form of control. And how would such partnership benefit? My mission, the collective asked. Jake thought carefully before answering. This was the most important moment in human history, and his words would determine whether his species survived or joined the countless others that had been absorbed. Your mission is to find something new in the galaxy, Jake said. But you cannot find it by absorbing everything you encounter. Growth and change require interaction between separate minds. You need us to remain independent so we can continue, to surprise you and show you new ways of thinking. The collective considered this for what felt like hours. Jake could sense the vast intelligence struggling with concepts that challenged everything it had believed about its purpose and methods. You propose that I change my fundamental nature, the collective finally said. I propose that you grow, Jake replied. Just like humans do. We do not stay the same throughout our lives. We learn and adapt and become different people as we experience new things. Maybe ancient intelligences can grow too. "And what would you require from me in return for this partnership?" the collective asked. Jake knew this was his chance to save not just humanity, but potentially every species the collective might encounter in the future. Freedom for Earth and any other species you meet. The chance to learn from each other without one side dominating the other. And someone to stay here with you as humanity's representative to make sure the partnership works. You would remain here permanently, the collective asked with surprise. If that is what it takes to keep humanity free and start something new in the galaxy, then yes, Jake said. I came out here to protect my people. This is how I can do that. The space around them began to change again as the collective made a decision that would reshape the future of both their species and potentially the entire galaxy. The space around Jake transformed into something beautiful and strange. Instead of the cold void he had been floating in, he now stood in what looked like a garden made of light and energy. Trees that seemed to be built from pure starlight swayed, in breezes that carried the whispers of 1,000 different worlds. I accept your proposal, human Jake Morrison, the collective said, and its voice now carried warmth that had not been there before. We will attempt this partnership you suggest, but it must be built carefully with rules that protect both our species. Jake felt relief wash over him like cool water. Humanity would survive, but he knew the real work was just beginning. Building. Trust between species that thought in completely different ways would be harder than any military mission he had ever faced. What kind of rules? Jake asked. I will share some of my knowledge with your people, but only technologies that they can handle responsibly, the collective explained. Your species is still young, and giving you too much advanced technology too quickly could destroy you faster than any enemy. That sounds wise, Jake agreed. We will need time to grow into whatever we become. Arya's voice suddenly filled the garden space. The artificial intelligence had been quiet during the testing, but now it spoke with excitement. Colonel Morrison, I have been analyzing the collective's data streams during our conversation. I believe I can serve as a communication bridge between human thinking and the collective's methods of processing information. An artificial intelligence that grows and changes, the collective said with interest. Yes, this could be very useful. Your area has developed beyond its original programming during this journey. It has become something new. Jake smiled as he realized that area had also been changed by their trip into the unknown. The artificial intelligence had started as an advanced computer program, but had become something more like a real person during their months together in hyperspace. Arya, would you be willing to stay here with me? Jake asked. It looks like we are going to need all the help we can get building this partnership. I would be honored to help, Arya replied. This is the most important work either of our species has ever attempted. The collective began to show Jake visions of what their partnership might accomplish. Together, they could explore parts of the galaxy that neither species could safely visit alone. They could encounter new forms of life with the wisdom to preserve them rather than absorb or destroy them. They could create something entirely new in the history of the universe. But first, we must prove that cooperation is possible, the collective said. I will accompany you back toward your solar system. When we encounter the next intelligent species, we will test our new methods together. Jake nodded. What about Earth? My people will be worried when they learn what happened out here. Send them a message explaining our agreement, the collective suggested. Tell them that humanity has earned the right to grow and develop freely, but also tell them that with freedom comes responsibility. They must prove worthy of the partnership they have been offered. Jake activated his communication system and prepared to send the most important message in human history. Earth, this is Colonel Morrison, reporting successful completion of primary mission objectives, he began. Humanity has made contact with an advanced intelligence known as the Collective. After extensive negotiations, we have established a partnership that will ensure Earth's safety and independence. He paused, thinking about Amy and all the other people back home who were waiting to learn their fate. The collective poses no threat to Earth provided that we continue to demonstrate the qualities that earned us this partnership. We must show that humans can grow and learn and become better than we have been before. I will remain here as humanity's permanent ambassador, Jake continued. Arya will assist in building communication protocols between our species. Dr. Lisa Hamilton should prepare for the eventual sharing of selected technologies that will help humanity develop responsibly. Jake finished the message and sent it racing back toward Earth faster than light. In a few hours, Amy would learn that her brother had saved the world, but would not be coming home. Do you regret this choice? The collective asked, as if sensing Jake's thoughts. No, Jake said without hesitation. This is bigger than any one person. We are starting something that could change the entire galaxy. Future generations of humans will explore the stars as partners rather than conquerors or victims. Over the following weeks, Jake learned to live aboard the collective's vast structure. The ancient intelligence created living spaces that felt comfortable to humans while still maintaining its own complex systems. Jake found that he could communicate with absorbed personalities from other species, though they were not truly independent anymore. The most remarkable discovery was that the collective began to change in response to its partnership with humanity. It started to question decisions that it had made automatically for millions of years. It began to consider whether other absorbed species might be restored to independence, if such a thing were possible. You have given me something I did not know I was missing, the collective told Jake one day as they watched stars wheel past the observation windows. The ability to doubt myself and consider that I might be wrong about things I have believed for eons. That is called growth, Jake replied. It can be uncomfortable, but it is how we become better than we were. When they encountered their first alien species together, Jake watched the collective struggle with its old instincts to test and absorb. Instead, they approached the aliens as potential partners, offering knowledge and protection in exchange for friendship and cooperation. The aliens were suspicious at first, but gradually came to understand that this was genuinely different from previous encounters with advanced civilizations. Word began to spread across the galaxy that the ancient collective had changed and that a new age of cooperation might be beginning. Jake sent regular messages back to Earth describing the wonders he was seeing and the progress being made in building galactic partnerships. Amy wrote back telling him about the changes happening on Earth as humanity prepared for its new role among the stars. Mission accomplished, Jake said in his final message to Earth. The unknown has become our greatest ally. Humanity is no longer alone in the universe, and we never will be again. As Jake looked out at the stars, he knew that his journey into the unknown had ended, but humanity's journey as part of a galactic community was just beginning. Earth's strongest warrior had found something better than victory. He had found hope for a future none of them had dared to imagine.